Hi everyone, I'm Carl, welcome to the Knowledge Hub, and I'm here today to talk you through how to wire a double socket. Let's go. What we're going to look at today is some of the basics, some of the tips of just how to wire a socket outlet. Okay, so people do this in a few different ways, but I'm going to show you a few tips that help me and that hopefully will help you guys as well at home. So first of all, obviously you're going to be dealing with some twin and earth cable. Okay, normally that's what's used on general properties, and in this instance we're working with a surface mounted back box. Okay, so what we need to look at here is terminating the socket, which is located on this table here, which I'm going to go through in a moment. But we need to terminate it in a way in which there's enough cable so we can pull that socket from down and inspect it, but as well that the cable's not too short to restrict us doing that as well. Okay, and obviously you don't want them to be too long where they're going to be overloaded in the back of that box there. So we need them to be an ideal length. Okay, so first of all we're just going to have a quick look at the materials that we're going to be using and obviously the tools that you need to do the job. Okay, so first of all we're going to have a few different materials. We're going to be using some sleeving. Okay, that's going to be used to cover up our CPC, so our circuit protective conductor, which we'll get into that as we go along. And some of the tools that we're going to be using are some long nose pliers, some side cutters, a suitable screwdriver. So in this case, we've just got a flathead screwdriver. Make sure when you are using these that it is suitable for the terminations in which you're going to be applying it to. So that one's going to be good for the job. Okay. You can also use a few different forms of cutters and wire strippers. In this case, we have got some C.K automatic wire strippers and also an electrician's knife. But for this demonstration, I'm going to be using my side cutters. Okay. So let's have a closer look at what we're going to be wiring on. So this here is our double socket outlet. So this is known as a faceplate, and basically we need to wire this onto this point here. Okay, so if we have a look at the back of this, you can see there is a few different terminations. Okay, so you have a termination there that's marked E, so that is for your earth. So that's where the CPCs are going to go. So there's one either side there, and as you can see, that interconnecting bar across. And basically what we're going to do is going to terminate our CPCs into this point for that circuit. Okay. You've also got a point there which is for the line conductor. So normally now with the new wiring colours, that's going to take your brown cable there. So the line conductor is going to go in that termination. And in this one there where it's labelled N, that is for your neutral conductor. Okay, so it's important when you're looking at these that you make sure that the screws are out fully. So what you'd need to do is take a screwdriver, just unwind these, just so basically the screw's not down like that. It wants to be all the way up, just so you've got a clear space to correctly terminate your cables. Okay, so obviously the conductor as well we need to take into account and need to make sure that when we're terminating it into this socket that it's the correct length and there's no excess copper or anything showing on the top as well. Okay, so we'll pop that down for one moment and then we're going to move on to now just looking at how we're going to strip this cable. Okay, so like I've mentioned previous, we need to look at the length of the cable and obviously making sure when we strip these back that the conductors themselves are a suitable length where they're not too long, where it's going to be where you're going to have loads of excess cable in the back of this box, and as well that they're not too short where you can't pull it down and inspect the actual terminations themselves. So there's a few ways of doing this. And the first one that I'm going to show you, and which personally I use, is using the side cutters, okay, which are these things here. So what you want to do when you're looking at a set of cables coming in, obviously we're in the workshop today, so in a house this could be surface mounted like it is here, and it could be in some trunking, or it could actually be a back box that's sunk into the fabric of the building, so into the wall. Okay, if that's the case, the cables can come in within the zones, so you might get them coming from below like it is now, or coming from above, or side to side. So on this instance, the same sort of thing applies to all types, whichever way it's coming in. I like to personally do it this way just because it gives you roughly the right amount of cable that you need to terminate. So what you want to do is get your cables and you need to push them up so they've got a slight bend in them, just to roughly in the middle of the box, and that would apply whether you're coming downwards or coming up or side to side. And then what you want to do is just bend them up, put your hand onto them, so you've got a hands width there. So as you can see on the side there, in the middle, and you've got about a hand's grips width on that cable. And then what we're going to do is chop off the excess at the bottom. Okay, so if we chop these off, then roughly that now is the right amount of cable that you're going to need to terminate into the back of the socket. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just show you some ways of stripping it. Like I say, this is with the side cutters. So what you need to do is just grab the cables, do a small nick into the cable as so, and just pull them apart gently like that. And you can either use your side cutters and grab the CPC and just pull it back, or you can use your long nose pliers. In this case, I'm just going to use the side cutters. So just bend it up. You don't want to be cutting through it because obviously it'll just come off, but you just want to gently work your way up and pull the cable down as you pull the CPC. So what you want to achieve is that going all the way roughly to the bottom entry point there. So you want to try and keep as much as you can of the outer sheathing basically. So as you get to this point, just keep your wires out of the way and push down so you get the sheathing roughly to the entry point at the bottom there. Okay, once you've got that, all you want to do, making sure you don't damage any of the conductors inside, is just cut along that cable, and then you should end up with roughly something like that. Okay, so what you need to do is you need to repeat that on both sides just so they're both even, and then we'll go on to the next step. Okay. When you then go to get these cables, you can see when you bend them down, there's a good bit of length on those cables, but because obviously I've snipped into the sheathing to pull them back, because we've measured it out and we've brought it into the middle of the box and then got a hand's width, we can actually trim it a little bit off these. So where you might have nicked it at the start, such as there where you can see, all you want to do is just cut that bit off, like so. And then you want to try and get your other cable exactly the same, or there or thereabouts. Okay, so then you should end up with two cables like that. Okay, so once you've got those, now we're going to look at actually trimming these and seeing how you're going to terminate them into the back of the socket. So there's a few things that you need to be considering when you're doing this. Is obviously once you trim these cables back, you are going to need to make sure that obviously the copper that's inside there is not exposed, so out at the back, because if that was live and you had that forward, really obviously you shouldn't be taking this off when it's live, so you must be following the safe isolation procedure and checks that way. But before you've proved it there, you don't really want to be at risk by having extra copper showing. So I'm going to show you a couple of quick tips just to show you how to do it and get the right length using this type of cutter, and then we'll go to dressing the cables in the back there. Okay, so I prepared this cable and basically, as we discussed previous, you have got on the back of your socket front there on the faceplate, you've got your line conductor entry point and you've got your neutral conductor entry point and the earth point there where it's going to accept your CPC. So on this, you're going to have your line conductor, the brown cable, your neutral and your CPC. The CPC there is the cable that's going to require the extra sleeving. So what we're going to do there is trim these back, and I'm going to show you a quick way and a way that really does work for most sockets. The only difference is that some manufacturers may have a shallower point, so you may have to adjust them accordingly. Okay, so how I would gauge this, if you was wiring one cable into these terminations such as this, so say for example this was the end of a radial or something like that, you're only going to be with one cable. So whenever you're terminating one cable, you really want to ideally double the ends over, so it's not just got one cable with that screw trying to make contact to it. So I'll show you how I'm going to do that. So roughly with these side cutters, if you measure from this point here to that point there, then that should roughly work out at the right amount for you to strip back to be able to double over and fit in that termination. So what we'll do is we'll measure it across. So if I put my cable there, and it's roughly about that distance, okay? So that's what I gauge it from using these cutters, okay? And these are the CK cutters, side cutters, so they're available for you to get. So what you're going to do is pop it in the slot where it's marked for 2.5. You're going to click back there, and then you're going to follow the same procedure for the neutral, but for this time I'm going to show you how to double it up. Okay, so you strip that back, you're then going to put those down, and then you're going to move over to your long nose pliers. So the idea with these is these are a good tool to be able to bend over and not damage the conductor. Okay, so what you want to do is get a good hold just over the end, and you want to bend it just short of halfway. Okay, so bend the conductor over, and what you want to do is loop it over so it touches the insulation there, and then grab it with your fingers there. All you want to do is squeeze on the conductor as such there, and then what you're trying to achieve is a nice flat connection as it is there. And then what that is giving you is a better connection. If you think about it, if you've got a screw that's coming down, the surface area of that now compared to it being just one core is a lot bigger, so that gives you better contact for that screw. So because we've measured it on the side cutters there, that distance, this should now hopefully be the right amount where it's going to fit in the back of this socket, and as well not show any excess copper. So if we bob that in there, and as so, you can see there straight away it is enough where it goes all the way in and there's no copper showing. So if it was too long, it would show something like that, and that's what you don't want. You want to be able to push that cable all the way in and it be secure. So that's what we're trying to achieve there. And all you would do in a real situation, you will have that down, so it's easier said than done when you got one hand. So you want to keep that pushed in, so make contact, try and push that cable into the connection there. And what you want to do is get your flathead screwdriver and then just gently screw down on that termination. Okay, it doesn't want to be too tight for now, and then just give it a little tug test, and all you're going to do is put a slight bend on it as such like that, and that's just going to help it when you push it into the back box. Okay, the other option which we can demonstrate is when we basically are dealing with two cables or more. Normally it's two cables going into it, or at worst case you might be sparing off and it could be three. So if that was the case, you're going to use the same guidance really. You're going to look at the side cutters there, and like I say, but rather than measuring from that point to that point as we did before, we're going to half that, and where it's got the little gap in the middle there, we use that as a reference point. So if we put our thumb to there and meeting it in the middle, that's roughly how much we want to chop off. So if we then get our side cutters, pop them on, strip that back, that roughly there is the right amount. Okay, so for the neutral conductor there, you put it in the neutral, and like I say, you would use this method when you're terminating two conductors together, okay? And you only generally tend to double over when it's just the one, okay? But some people do double over on all connections. It's not to say that's wrong, it's just a different way of doing it, okay? So all you would do is pop that in, and as you can see, that cable goes all the way in, it's going to make good contact, and there is no exposed copper showing, okay? Whereas that would be exposed, and that's what we don't want. We want it to go all the way in, but not too far in where it's going to be biting down on the actual insulation there, okay? Cool, so that's where we're at with that. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to show you how to dress it in the back of the box, and basically how we're going to make this nice and tidy, and how easy it is to actually terminate it. We're going to try and move these cables in the back of the back box. We want them to be split off, and obviously because you've got two cables, two sets there, you're going to have basically a feed in and a feed out, okay? So if this was a radial or a ring final circuit, it doesn't matter which it was, you're just working with two twin and earths or twin and CPC, okay? So what you want to do is try and think about where these cables are going to go. So you've got your line conductor on that side, your neutral on that side, but remember this is going to be that way on when you wire it. So if we look from above, the neutrals are going to be on the left hand side, the lines are going to be on the right, but there is a point for the CPCs at either end. So best practice would be if you try and get one in either side, and obviously if this was a metal back box, then it'd be good practice to earth the back box via flying earth, just to make sure you've got an earth connection in there as well. But because we're working with a surface mounted plastic box, there is no earth connection there. So what we're going to do is terminate both these CPCs into both sides are there. Okay, so one in that side, one in that side. So before we do that, what I'm going to do is just show you how to bend these round and just make it nice and neat so it makes it better for us when we're terminating. Okay, so neutrals on the left, lines on the right. So what you want to do is try and just move these about, and because obviously you've got to think that they're going to be terminating into the back of a socket outlet, don't be afraid to obviously move these in the back. So as you can see, this is giving us enough room to move the cables, bend them, and obviously not be restricted really, because obviously if you cut these too short, then you wouldn't be able to do any of this and you'd be struggling to then terminate on there because it'd be too tight in. Okay, so put the neutrals on the left, just move your CPCs out of the way. We'll try and move these. So put this one on the left, put that one on the right, keep the neutrals together there, and then your lines, you're going to do the same. Just bob them over, put a nice bend into them. Because what you don't want to do is cut too much off. You just want a nice gentle bend just so these can terminate into the back of the faceplate. Okay, so roughly something like that. Okay, and then what you can do, obviously you can trim these back and make them even as we're working. All right, well that's what we want to try and achieve there. So then when we pull them forward, we've got good access to check our terminations at the back. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to trim these. We're going to use the same approach as what we've just explained. So we're going to use that sort of method. So we're going to be working from the edge of the side cutter there just to the middle point there, and that should give us ideally the right amount of conductor to go into the termination without having too much exposed and run the risk of obviously biting down on that insulation. Okay, so what I'm going to do, first of all, I'm just going to make a little cut just to make sure they're the same. And same with these ones, there's a bit of excess there. And then what we're going to do is, because like I say, you've got plenty to work with, you can straighten these out, measure it across, just put your thumb there. That's roughly where we need to be. So you can either do that on every single cable, or you can just offer the other cable up, same as that. You want it to go on the end and cut it roughly the same. So then you can measure them two together and they should hopefully be the similar length. Okay, so that's what we want to achieve for all of them. So same again, just pop it on there. Same again, just put it on there, in the middle. There we go. So, as you notice, we've trimmed those back now, but we're still left with these CPCs just exposed. So what we want to try and do there is put some sleeving on. It's better to put it on at this stage because obviously once you've started wiring stuff on there, you don't want to be trying to mess about in there. So we'll pop some earth sleeving on, and the best way to do this is just to offer it up and see what you're working with, and obviously because it's just going to be the single point going in, we're going to look at doubling it over. So the only one that we're going to be using today is the green and yellow one, and this is for the CPC, so the circuit protective conductor. So we're going to do one at a time, just get a decent length there, and what you're going to do is you're going to slide it down the CPC, okay? And what you want to try and do is leave enough that you're going to bend over, okay? So, and then when you get to the end, just get to that point there, grab it, snip that, and then when you push that all the way down, because that's where it wants to be, you're going to be left with a good amount of conductor showing there. And as you can see, if you look directly in there, you can see that the sleeving's gone all the way to the entry point, and that's where you want it. You don't want to be having it where it's going to be like that, because really that's not protected there. So we're going to slide it all the way down, just so it sits in as if it was covered up. Okay, and we're going to apply the same technique to the other side. So again, just get a decent amount of sleeving. There we go. And the thing is, if you're terminating this in your socket and it's tricky to get into or whatever, don't be afraid of, you know, starting again and trimming it back. It's better to get it right at this point than trying to struggle later on. So just pop that down, and like I say, you're left with a piece of conductor there that's able to be doubled over and terminated. Okay, so now we've done that, What we'll do, we'll look at doubling these over on the ends. So what we want to do is the same technique as I showed you before, is you want to double it over enough so we can make a good contact. So to the actual sleeve in there that you've put on, and then hold it, and then just a little squeeze, a little gentle squeeze there, and as you can see, you're going to end up with something like that, okay? If you notice that there, the sleeving continues all the way down, so there's nothing exposed there, okay? So we'll do the same for the other side. Just on the very end, a nice gentle squeeze, and then you're roughly going to be something like that. Okay, so that's that step done. So all we've done there, just to recap, is we've stripped the cable back. We've put them in a position where it's going to be easy for us to work with, because let's face it, you want to work smarter, not harder. So the best way to do that is like I've demonstrated previous, and you're just going to bend them where they're going to marry up now with the connections in the back of the socket, okay? Jobs are good in, and we're going to look at now terminating the socket. Check all your connections, make sure they're open. So like I said, we're gonna wire it on both sides this time. So just make sure they're all open. You don't want to go too much, because if you go too much, they're going to end up falling out. And trust me, you're going to be in a world of pain, especially if you're in a customer's house or your own house and it falls in the pile of the carpet, or you've got stuff about, it's not going to be good. So what you want to do is make sure they're out just enough, just so you can get those cables inside. And then what I'm going to do now is I'm going to screw these on, and we're going to look at how they sit within the back of the socket. First of all, we're just going to marry it up, and we're just going to see what we're working with. It doesn't really matter which one you do first, because obviously we've got a lot of give. This is going to fall forward. So, okay, so what you want to do is put these in the back of the socket together, like so. Keep them pushed down, and then what you want to do is get your screwdriver, and you want to tighten those up, okay? You don't need to go crazy at this point. You just need to tighten them up tight enough that they're not going to pop out, okay? So then you should end up with something like that. So that there is correctly terminated. You've not got any exposed copper, and as well, obviously, it's not biting onto the insulation for that. So just going to repeat the same process all the way across, making sure that you are looking, so you're doing a visual polarity check as you're wiring it. So you've got your neutral conductor, which is the blue one, going into N for neutral, and then your line conductor, which is the brown one, going into L for line. Okay, so we'll do this as well. Same again, push them both in. And then what you're going to do is just tighten down whilst holding these in the back. Okay, and then roughly it should end up like that. So then we're going to continue, we're going to put a CPCs in there. Like I say, you're going to have it there, so that conductor is going to drop straight in, like so. And then all you're going to do is tighten these up whilst keeping, you got your finger there, because if you didn't, that could be bouncing out, so it's good practice just to keep your finger down. Just helps that conductor stay where it needs to be, just while you tighten up that termination. And then there you go, you've got that one in there. So same on this side. If you have it, and say for example like that one there is trying to go in at an angle, you can use your long nose pliers, and all you do is you just grab the end and you just straighten that up, okay? And the idea behind that is that it's going to have contact with the screw flat rather than going at an angle and then risk it being on top of the conductors where you've bent over being on top of each other. So push that in all the way. Again, same process as before, just put it in, keep your fingers on it and tighten up. Okay, so that's nice and tight. So as you've got those in there, you can give them a little tug test there. We're going to do this same procedure again, and then all you're going to do is then bend these up, and then you're going to push that back, okay? Once you push that back, you can see that that is going to sit nicely on that back box. And then as well, if you was inspecting that, you could pull that forward and you've got access to all the terminations there. You can quite clearly see that they're all nice and correctly terminated. So what you can do at this point, since you've pushed it back already, and that's okay, pull it forward, and what you want to do is just give these a good nip up now. Make sure all these are nice and tight, because what you don't want to do is leave a loose connection. Okay, so give them all a nice tighten up. You don't need to go crazy, just enough so they're not going to become loose. And then the last check to do before you tighten this back up and push it back is just give it a little tug test, okay? And all you're doing there is just making sure that every cable that you've terminated there is nice and tight and secure, okay? And then what you're going to do is you're going to go back to your packet or when you bought the faceplate itself, and you should have 2 screws, okay? And these are the screws that you're going to pop in there and screw this to the back box, okay? So all you're going to do is pop those in. Pop in like so, marry it up. Like I say, we're demonstrating this on a dead board today. The same applies if you was going to change the socket front. Just make sure when you are doing this type of work that you've got the power off, you've safely isolated, and as well, more than anything, you are competent to be doing this as well, okay? So all you're going to do is just gently screw these back, and there you have it. Nice, secure, well terminated socket outlet. And then all you'd need to do then is run your series of tests. You've already done a visual polarity check inside when you're wiring it, but it's good practice then to put in a polarity plug-in device and also follow all the necessary checks and testing procedures. Like I say, if this was a second fix, then you would need to check that circuit to make sure it's compliant with BS 7671. And as well, if you was changing that and you were just wanting to change your socket front in your house, then just make sure, like I say, that you're following the correct safe isolation procedures and that you're working safely at all times, okay? Don't forget to like, subscribe and comment. Thanks for watching. Take care. Bye. See you soon.